Hey guys, I'm Teacher Jess. For Ed Group today, we're going to be talking about brain plasticity or neuroplasticity, the way your brain can change over time, and how you can go about making those changes and making sure that your brain is doing the things it needs to do to be able to change and learn new things. So, the first thing we're going to do is talk about the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. So, this may be something you've seen before, either in school or in therapy sessions. I'm going to share with you a picture that shows what this looks like. So right here, you'll see it says at the top, change your words, and at the bottom, change your mindset. So even the words that we're using on a day-to-day basis can show whether our mind is ready to grow or if it's stuck in one place. So if it's stuck in one place, we might be saying things like, I can't do this. This work is good enough. I'm done. This is too hard. And if our brain is in a place where it's ready to grow and we're ready to accept a little bit of change and move forward and make that progress, we might say things like, I can try a different strategy. Is this really my best work? This may take some time and effort. So we're saying those things that show that we're ready to move forward. So having a growth mindset is going to come up in our first video where there is a man, his name is Daniel, and I think he explains this a little bit better than I do. So I'm going to share that with you. I'm just going to turn off my camera so you don't have me on the side. It's called, Do You Have a Fixed Mindset?
Hey everyone, Daniel here from Next Level Life. I've always found it interesting how some people seem to succeed despite very difficult circumstances, and then some people don't, even when they seem to have everything going for them from an early age. There's been a lot of theories thrown around as to why that is, but I've never really felt satisfied with the answers. Probably because there is no simple answer. So what really makes people successful? If it's not their upbringing, and it's not their education or economic background, then what is it? Well, like I said, there's not going to be a simple, singular answer that this one video can cover because there's a lot of factors that go into it. But I believe that one of the big factors behind why people either succeed or don't succeed is their mindset. In essence, your attitude determines your altitude. And with that in mind, today I'm going to be covering Carol Dweck's theory on growth versus fixed mindsets. I'm going to be talking about what they are, how they're different, as well as how much of a difference having a growth mindset can have on your life. I'm also going to be talking about how to change to a growth mindset if you're currently in a fixed mindset. Let's get started. So the basic difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset is that a fixed mindset assumes that our character, intelligence, and creative abilities are static. Whether good or bad, they're all seen as just a given. You either got it or you don't. So basically, we can't change in any meaningful ways, and success is just the affirmation of that inherent intelligence that we already possess. It's an assessment of how those givens measure up against an equally fixed standard, which in this case is success or failure. For example, did you answer the question right or were you wrong? That's all that matters. And oftentimes, those with fixed mindsets will psychologically sort of tune out the correct answer if they learn that they initially had the wrong answer. So those with fixed mindsets do strive for success, but above all, they also strive to avoid failure.
I'm hearing some things in this video that remind me of myself at some times, especially when I'm learning new things. And it's okay if you have a fixed mindset that's, nothing is terribly wrong with you. It's really common. It's just one of those things that we want to look at and start to recognize so that we can move forward and move past it. And I think the earlier we acknowledge those things, the more time we have in our life to work on it. So taking an idea of what's going on in your life, maybe how you're reacting to those things as we're watching this video, but trying not to harp on it. If you're feeling like this is you, totally fine. Something to work on, right? Keep that growth mindset.
As a way of maintaining that sense of being inherently smart or skilled, whereas someone with a growth mindset actually thrives on challenges and sees failure not as evidence that they're unintelligent, but rather as a springboard for growth and stretching their existing abilities to improve upon them. These two mindsets manifest themselves from a very early age, and they lead to a great deal of our behaviors and our relationships with success and failure, both personally and professionally. And ultimately, they even have an effect on our capacity for happiness. There's a great picture that I found that really illustrates the differences between these two mindsets, and I'll put it up on the screen for you now. As you can see, fixed mindsets lead to a desire to look smart, and as a result, someone with it tends to avoid challenges and give up easily when they run into obstacles. Effort is just seen as fruitless or worse. And when someone with a fixed mindset receives constructive criticism, they tend to ignore that useful negative feedback. They also tend to feel threatened by the success of others, and as a result of their deterministic view of the world, they may plateau early in life and fail to achieve their full potential. A growth mindset, on the other hand, leads to a desire to learn, and therefore, people with growth mindsets tend to embrace challenge and persist in the face of setbacks. They see effort as the path to get to mastery, and they learn from criticism when they receive it. And as a result of this, they tend to find lessons and inspiration in the success of others, and reach even higher levels of achievement, giving them greater sense of free will, because they know that they determine their destiny. To illustrate the differences between the two mindsets further, consider this example. During Dweck's research, she conducted a study with 4-year-olds because, yes, as it turns out, the mindsets are rooted in us that young. And in the study, Dweck and her colleagues gave a classroom of 4-year-olds a jigsaw puzzle, and a very easy one at that, and they all finished it, of course. But after they finished it, they were offered a choice. They could either redo the easy jigsaw puzzle that they had just done, or try a new and harder one. And those that showed tendencies towards fixed mindsets stayed on the safe side and chose the easier puzzle that would affirm their already existing abilities. The kids were essentially telling the researchers that their belief was that the smart kids don't make mistakes, whereas those kids with growth mindsets thought it was an odd choice to begin with, because why would anyone want to do the same puzzle over and over again if they aren't learning anything? In the end, they chose to tackle the harder puzzle. In other words, the fixed mindset kids wanted to make sure that they succeeded in order to seem smart, whereas the growth mindset kids wanted to stretch themselves, because their definition of success was about becoming smarter. Now, that is a pretty small example. I mean, we're talking about jigsaw puzzles from 4-year-olds, for goodness sakes. But think about how that view of the world would affect your life if what was revealed in that example actually carried over. How would your career go differently if you only ever tried to do things you already knew you could do, in order to appear smart rather than actually doing things that challenged yourself in order to make you become smarter? You may actually end up getting recognized with a fixed mindset early on, because everything you seem to do turns to gold, right? I mean, you're only doing the things you already know you can achieve, but what happens when you get that promotion and suddenly you're faced with challenges that you don't already know how to overcome? What do you do then? You're not going to be asking questions, because with that fixed view of the world, you would think that it makes you seem unintelligent. And remember, according to this worldview, smart people don't make mistakes. And effort is, again, fruitless or worse, because we can't change in any meaningful ways, at least according to the fixed mindset. But believe it or not, it actually goes further than that. Let's take a look at our relationships. In her studies, Dweck found that people with fixed mindsets believed that their ideal mate would be one that put them on a pedestal and made them feel like they were perfect, whereas those with growth mindsets prefer a partner that would recognize their faults and lovingly help them to improve. They wanted someone who would encourage them to learn new things and become a better person. It was also found that people with fixed mindsets would feel rather threatened, maybe even hostile, after talking about minor discrepancies about how their partner and they saw their relationship. Which leads me to believe that having a fixed mindset would probably actually lead to a lot more stressful of a life. I mean, we know the health hazards that can come along with having too much stress in our lives, but perhaps the most destructive of all of Dweck's findings, at least when it comes to relationships, is the belief that if the relationship requires work to function, then the people with fixed mindsets are a little more likely to believe that something is terribly wrong with the relationship itself. And any discrepancy of opinions or preferences is a result of character flaws on behalf of one's partner. Wow. I don't even think I have to go into how that view could ruin many a relationship, if true. So if you have a fixed mindset and want to develop a growth mindset, how do you do it? Well, it's one of those things that's very easy to say, but much harder to do. And it all starts with recognizing your fixed mindset tendencies and becoming conscious of what makes you fall into viewing the world purely through that binary trap of success and failure. And whenever that happens, remind yourself that that is what's happening, and that you're getting something wrong or not being able to accomplish something right off the bat is not a sign of failure. It's just another learning experience. Remember, the whole idea behind a growth mindset is that you're always trying to improve, you're always trying to learn, and challenges and obstacles are what give you the chance to do that. There's one quote that I always used to remind myself that facing these challenges were a good thing when I was trying to change to a growth mindset. It was an old quote from a Michael Jordan commercial, and it went like this: "I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." So that's the fixed and growth mindsets, at least as studied by Carol Dweck. If you like this video or learned something, be sure to like and subscribe, and if you're new to the channel, you can also check out my playlists for even more content. I'll be leaving those in the description below, but that'll do it for me. So until next time, thanks for watching, and have a great day.
So it was just a quick video about that fixed, let me get my camera back on, about that fixed mindset and growth mindset and how that works and kind of how it can relate to us. So what I want you to do now is you should have one piece of blank paper and a pencil. I'll give you time to get it if you don't have it. And you're going to be drawing a little brain just on one side because we're going to use the other side for something else. This is my brain. I'm not an artist, but it's something I'm working on. So this is my quick outline brain. And on one side, you're going to draw a line down the middle. On one side, I want you to write fixed. On the other side, I want you to write growth. And on each side, you're going to put 4 bullets and write 4 quotes of something you might say or you have said in your life, showing that you're in that mindset. So one of my examples is in my fixed mindset. I said, I'm bad at, it could be I'm bad at math. I've said I'm bad at art. A growth mindset for that would be it's something I can work on, or I like a challenge. Mine says I can do hard things. So go ahead and take some time. You can pause me on here and fill out your brain. And then when you're ready, just press play. Okay, I hope you guys actually did that activity, and your growth mindset and fixed mindset brains are there for you to look at and maybe share with your peers or somebody you know to kind of talk about what you learned and what you can move forward to thinking about. The next thing we're going to do is talk about what I said earlier, our neuroplasticity, or how our brain changes over time. So we have another video. I'm sorry, I just love these videos. I think it's a SciShow video. I'm not quite sure, but it is about, it's called Your Brain is Plastic. And they talk about how our brains continue to change. And there are a lot of people out there who think as you get older, or as you grow up, you lose the ability to learn new things, or your brain stops making those connections enough that you can learn something new, like an instrument or a language. But science is telling us now that that is not true. And over time, we are able to still make those connections. It just has to do with how many times we do it or how we're committing to it. So that's why it was important to touch on the growth mindset and the fixed mindset, is being in that growth mindset is going to help you to open your brain to learn some new things moving forward. So I'm going to share with you this video. It is not too long. I think it's 10 minutes, so just a little bit longer than what you just saw. I'm going to turn off my camera so I'm not there on the corner.
You would not be here if you weren't interested in learning, and neither would I. But here's something we haven't learned about together: learning. The ways in which we acquire and retain knowledge, which is the very definition of learning, is really a science in itself. And like any other discipline that involves the study of the human brain, is practically still in its infancy. Just 20 years ago, most scientists believed that once we reached adulthood, our brains were pretty much fixed. Not that we were incapable of learning anything new exactly, but the assumption was that our brain's development phase was over. And now it's pretty much there to remind our hearts to keep beating and occasionally let us remember where we left our phone. But thanks to huge advances in things like functional brain imaging, we have a clearer picture than ever of how our brains work, and we're beginning to observe some wonderful things. For one, we now know that the process of learning actually alters the structure of our brains at the cellular level. And what's more, it turns out that our brains never stop changing to make room for new information. People often compare the human brain to a computer, but imagine a computer that could actually grow new circuits as it acquires new facts and associations, and you have a much more awesome comparison. This is the gift known as neuroplasticity. You might think of plastic as being stiff and cheap, but in biology, plasticity refers to the capacity of living things to mold themselves to new conditions. and our brains are great at it. For one thing, your brain cells, or neurons, are always changing their connections to one another to meet changing demands. Each of your neurons consists of a central body with spindly dendrites and a long axon stemming from it. The neuron transmits electrochemical signals to other brain cells through its axon and receives signals through its dendrites via connections where the cells meet, called synapses. When you're born, each neuron in your brain has about 2,500 synapses connecting it to other cells. But by the time you're 3, and you've become just a sponge of fascinating new information, like what sound a piggy makes and where your mom's face goes when she hides it behind her hands, you have 6 times as many, up to 15,000 synapses for each neuron in your brain. In this regard, it's kind of true that your brain hits its peak when you're young, because by the time you're an adult, your brain cells have about half as many synapses as when you were 3. But it turns out that's okay, because we now know that synapses just shrink up when they're no longer needed. Like, you know now that pigs go oink and that people still exist when you can't see their faces, so you don't need to keep those connections to remind you. This process of winnowing down unused connections is known as synaptic pruning. Meanwhile, your neurons experience all kinds of new growth as you continue to soak up new information, like how to drive, how to solve for X, and how to get through that one really hard level in your favorite castle smashing game. Here, the key to learning is memory, because you need to retain that information in order to apply it in the future. So your brain cells can change in different ways depending on how long you remember what you've learned. As you stockpile data in your short-term memory, for example, the structure of your existing synapses has been found to change, with more and stronger dendrites growing to reinforce them. So for info that you retain for just a short time, like how to destroy digital castles using rocks and fire, you don't need to sprout whole new connections. Just beefing up the existing ones you've used so far will help you master the game just fine. But when it comes to important stuff like the learning we do at school, or hopefully the stuff you learn here on SciShow, your neurons actually forge entirely new synapses over time as you relearn, re-remember, and reuse the information. This is how your brain builds the long-term memory you need to retain the learning you're doing right now at work and at school, and turn it into a lifetime of applied knowledge. So I said it before, and I'll say it again. Take care of your brain, and odds are it'll take care of you. Thanks for watching this SciShow Dose, brought to you by Intel Education. Follow them on Twitter at IntelEDU and visit them at the link below. If you have any questions or ideas for us, we're in the comments and on Facebook and Twitter. And if you want to keep getting smarter with us, you can go to youtube.com/SciShow and subscribe.
So like I said, pretty short, but the guy in that video for SciShow, he talks really fast, so he's able to get you a bunch of information really quickly. If there was anything you wanted to hear again, feel free to rewind and watch it over. But we're going to move forward. And what I want from you guys after having watched that video and hopefully had a little bit of discussion with your peers about some questions or things that are going on, or where you see how that makes sense and examples in your lives. If not, that's fine. You can do it later. I want you to take the page that you used earlier to draw your brain on. You're going to flip it over. And I'm assuming that you know what doodling is like, but I'm going to give you a quick rundown. It's like drawing a easy, simple picture, not too much detail, and then maybe adding small characters like stick figures or little blurbs about words. Just a small picture, nothing too in-depth. It doesn't have to take a long time. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just getting your ideas on paper. So somewhat like a rough draft, but for a picture. For this, you're going to draw another brain. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to look like a brain. It could just look like a box. Your idea of a brain in a cartoon form. And inside that brain, you're going to show me what it looks like to you to have all those synapses growing and connecting and making those changes. So have fun, make it creative. If you guys finish early, there is a game for you called Picturica, and it's a game where you flip a card over, you look for a picture on a big mat of hidden pictures. It's a game that uses your brain. So what happens is if you have never played this game before, all the pictures are new to you, and it's a little harder to find. And as you play this game over and over again, even though the pictures change where they are and they're not just right where you look for them, having seen that picture before is getting these synapses growing stronger, and your brain is actually getting used to it and making it easier for you to find it even in a new location. So if you have time, go ahead and play that game and think about how it's working your brain. All right, bye guys.